Next is Dylan Mortenson. We're asking for some accommodations for Miss Mortenson and that she be allowed to sit in my seat.
Sure. Dylan, just take your time, all right?
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. What happened that night changed everything. Because of him, four beautiful, genuine, compassionate people were taken from this world for no reason. He didn't just take their lives. He took the light they carried it into every room. He took away how they made everyone feel safe, loved, and full of joy. He took away the ability for me to tell them that I love them and that I'm so proud of them. He took away who they were becoming and the futures they were going to have. He took away birthdays, graduations, celebrations, and all the memories that we were supposed to make. All of it is gone. And all the people who loved them are just left to carry that weight forever. He didn't just take them from the world. He took them from me, my friends, my people who felt like my home, the people I looked up to and adored more than anyone. He took away my ability to trust the world around me. What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break. I was barely 19 when he did this. We had just celebrated my birthday at the end of September. I should have been figuring out who I was. I should have been having the college experience and starting to establish my future. Instead, I was forced to learn how to survive the unimaginable. I couldn't be alone. I had to sleep in my mom's bed because I was too terrified to close my eyes. Terrified that if I blinked, someone might be there. I made escape plans everywhere I went. If something happens, how do I get out? What can I use to defend myself? Who can help? And then there are the panic attacks. The kind that slam into me like a tsunami out of nowhere. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't stop shaking.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, that was a heartbreaking moment where Dylan at last breaks his silence, and you can see the trauma is still raw, still real. Did you notice the moment about 22 seconds into the clip where Dylan whispers to the bearded prosecutor something to the effect of she doesn't want to see him or he doesn't want him to see her? Remember, she'd actually seen him in the scene, probably seen those eyes, certainly seen those eyebrows, and so she doesn't want to see him, she doesn't want him to see her. And so it seems like she asks him to use his body to physically block him out of her view. And that's literally how, I mean, she's kind of hiding from him, cowering from him, even all of these years later. This stands in stark contrast to Kaylee's sister's statement, which was firm, which was assertive, which was, I'm not going to show you that I'm vulnerable, that I've been traumatized. Well, this was the opposite. This was absolutely showing the real raw trauma. And I must say, this, I think, affected me more than that. I think most people seem to be affected more by the anger. I was definitely affected by the devastation, just the trauma, the tear in the fabric of society, the terrible rippling effects that crime can have on the innocent. And it's something that we don't want to add insult to injury. And an extended trial could have done that. And I know a lot of people didn't want that. But was it because you didn't want that for yourself? Or are you thinking of the interests of society? Because that is what Dylan represents.
All I can do is scream because the emotional pain and the grief is too much to handle. My chest feels like it's caving in. Sometimes I drop to the floor with my heart racing, convinced something is very wrong. It's far beyond anxiety. It's my body reliving everything over and over again.
Now, in my opinion, this was the most authentic moment of the whole sentencing thing. Why? Because you literally have the survivor, the person who was there, the person who actually was present in the house when all of this happened and who actually saw, in a way, caught Brian red-handed. Probably his hands literally were red with blood. And here she is facing him in court. But this is what it really likes to be in this situation. It's somewhat hypothetical to be someone's sister and sort of grandstanding in a certain way. And you might say that's what he deserves. But the reality, the lived reality, the experience is exactly what you're hearing and seeing from Dylan right here.
My nervous system never got the message that it is over. And it won't let me forget what he did to them. People call me strong. They say I'm a survivor, but they don't see what my new reality looks like. They don't see the panic attacks, the hypervigilance, the exhaustion, the way I scan every room I enter, the way I flinch at sudden sounds.
And this is where you get a real sense of Kohberger as a psychopath. There's very little empathy. What you do notice are slight movements where he swivels slightly in his chair. And as far as I know, it's hard to say because the video is not that great, but as far as I know, this was the only moment in all of the victim impact statements where he did seem to do that slightly. And you know what that is? Self-soothing. And so at the time that she is making these statements, bear in mind, Brian's got two sisters of his own. Are they also psychopaths? In any event, you get the sense that to some extent he may be to some extent moved or disturbed by this show of this really overflowing emotion, to the extent that he in a way needs to self-soothe. It's not a huge display of emotion, but it's not nothing.
They don't know how heavy it is to carry so much pain and still be expected to keep going, and that's because of him. He stole parts of me I may never get back. He took the version of me who didn't constantly ask, what if it happens again? What if next time I don't survive?
And of course, all of these are very real issues that victims, in whatever way that they are victims, need to address. The whole question here is recovery, is getting over this whole trauma. And personally, I think what Dylan has done here is an incredible first step for someone who's in a situation that most of us will hopefully never ever experience. She's taken a first step, which is courage, to basically tell her story, unvarnished, just the outpouring of that. And then from there, baby steps. She's still very young. She's still got a long way to go. And of course, Brian will now be safely tucked away in prison.
He may have shattered parts of me, but I'm still putting myself back together. Piece by piece, I'm learning how to live in this new version of life. It is not easy. It hurts, but I'm still trying. Still trying, and I'm not trying just for me. I'm trying for them, my friends. About a year ago, I had a dream about them. I got to say goodbye. I told them I won't be able to see you again, so I need to tell you goodbye.
And that already is progress. A dream like that is the subconscious trying to put those pieces together. Koberger was as well. He was also trying to put his life together after his heroin adventures, and that was part of what his old college adventure was at Washington State University. There's also a moment at this when she talks about the dream that he looks briefly down at the table. And as far as I'm concerned, I know if I was in that situation, hopefully I will never be, but if I was in that situation and someone was crying and I'd done something wrong and I'd hurt someone, I think I would look down. I think that would be the obvious thing, which is just a simple acknowledgement of shame. And that's the first time, I think, in the entire victim impact statements that I saw him look down, very briefly, but it wasn't nothing. And it was during Dylan's statement.
I kept asking why, and all I could say was, I can't tell you, but I have to. When I woke up, I felt shattered and heartbroken, but also strangely grateful. Like maybe in some way that dream gave us the goodbye we never got. Still, no dream can replace them, and no goodbye will ever feel finished. He is a hollow vessel, something less than human, a body without empathy, without remorse. He chose destruction. He chose evil. He feels nothing. He tried to take everything from me. My friends, my safety, my identity, my future. He took their lives, but I will continue trying to be like them, to make them proud.
And of course, she's absolutely right. He was trying to take literally everything from someone else in their entire lives because he felt like he'd lost his. You can actually also see when she makes certain statements, he blinks. It's not like he's just standing there. She calls him an empty vessel. And I mean, I agree in principle that is basically what he is. But him blinking is certainly intellectually. He's listening to what she's saying and he's registering what she's saying and he's thinking about what she's saying. And when she mentions certain things, I'm sure that he goes into his recall and remembers what she's saying. There was also a brief moment here where he actually leaned to one side, where he seemed to want to get a better view, or certainly he seemed again moved by whatever she was saying, not necessarily in a positive way.
Living is how I honor them. Speaking today is to help me find some sort of justice for them. And I will never let him take that from me. He may have taken so much from me, but he will never get to take my voice. He will never take the memories I had with them. He will never erase the love we shared, the laughs we had, or the way they made me feel seen and whole. Those things are mine. They are sacred, and he will never touch them. I get to feel sadness. I get to feel rage. I get to feel joy even when it's hard. I get to feel love even when it hurts. I get to live. And while I will still live with this pain, at least I get to live my life. He will stay here, empty, forgotten, and powerless.
Now, I don't know if you noticed, she didn't get any applause for that, and she showed by far the most courage of anyone in that entire courtroom, anyone in that room. It's also interesting that when she mentioned the word rage, and I'm sure that is something that Brian felt when he committed these crimes, he kind of pursed his lips. That's kind of the most facial reaction he showed throughout her entire statement. Of course, Dylan was only one of the two survivors that appeared in court and bravely, through tears, as you've just heard, addressed the court. If the media coverage of this case wasn't as unrelenting and ravenous as it was, I'm sure Bethany would have mustered the wherewithal to attend as well. And after hearing Dylan, you sort of feel like it would have been good to hear Bethany, and who knows, perhaps a good first step for her to confront all of this trauma as well. The great gift of Dylan appearing in person was that the first time some people who have yet to experience a moment of real human emotion, and here I'm not talking about Koberger, I'm talking about people out here in true crime land, the true crime community, right? Suddenly realized the realness, the rawness of what had happened, what had been experienced through Dylan's words, through her appearance for the very first time. She literally took around 2 minutes just to get herself ready to speak, and when she did it while seated, as the man who murdered her housemate sat silently, avidly watching and listening to her speak. And that brings us to number 2. Ethan Chapin's family didn't attend. Although Ethan's parents didn't attend, his mom posted this image of Ethan as a young boy on Instagram earlier the same day. She's also posted additional messages since then. Initially, I have to say, I found the impact statements genuine, mature, intelligent, and sensitive, especially from the young people who were closer to the case. But as more people came forward, it was astonishing just the diversity of the human drama. Maddie's grandmother's testimony and her biological father's, for me, were particularly touching. While some felt forgiveness, others seemed barely able to control their still bristling resentment. Some, like Dylan, were still clearly in the grip of grief. Others were still clearly in the grip of rage and anger and bitterness. While some spoke about the beautiful moments of lost lives, others stabbed their fingers angrily at Brian and promised the fires of hell were waiting for him before turning to the court and saying, "God bless." Yet another permutation of how the victims chose to grieve was by simply not even attending, and that was the choice of Ethan Chapin's parents. And their choice was to grieve privately, outside of the spotlight, away from the circus, like Bethany Funk. Number 3, prosecutor was asked if Koberger was a serial killer. The fact that people thought this at the beginning and some still suspected this at the end tells you how incredibly poor the vaunted true crime community actually is, not only at deciphering identity, but by inference motive as well. I see some true crime creators who were convinced that he was a serial killer still have massive audiences following them breathlessly, following their every word, completely having forgotten that they were completely wrong in their initial assessment of him. Because if you don't have a handle on who someone is, you don't have a hope of finding your way to the why. I guess some people don't really care. Those who thought Koberger was a serial killer also totally misunderstood the true nature of the crime. It wasn't some mastermind criminal who had even almost perpetrated the perfect crime, like some seasoned veteran. There were so many people who couldn't even recognize that. This wasn't the perfect crime. It was the ghastly work of a rank amateur. And if you couldn't see that, you really couldn't see anything. And there were so many who couldn't see that. And so to ask this question at this point just shows just how ridiculous, in a way, the coverage of this case has been throughout. Number 4, was Koberger scratched by one of the victims? Well, I think if that had occurred, you would have found his DNA under their fingernails, and I don't think that is the case. Now, in a one-on-one battle where there's a knife involved, just with one person, let alone 4, the chances of being scratched or being touched by a victim are actually very high. There are a few other murder suspects that also seem to have fingernail scratches on their bodies. Barry Morphew, Scott Peterson. Have a look at this.
I know that you mentioned on Good Morning America that it wouldn't surprise you if they found blood
Sure.
in your vehicles. Explain why.
Well, take a look at my hand. You can see, cuts here on my knuckles, numerous scars.
There was also, of course, Amanda Knox. Some pointed out a fresh injury to her throat after the incident. Now, I'm not really sure what to make of this. The information shows that a friend noticed scratches before and after the time of the murder, so it's not necessarily that the murders had anything to do with it, but one would imagine with 4 person-to-person altercations, surely he got scratched or injured in some way. Anyway, according to NBC News, Koberger looked like it had been scratched around the time of the murders, and it looked like it had been done with fingernails, and that's what a friend told detectives in 2023. The friend said that he noticed the scratch as well as injuries to Koberger's knuckles. The friend told detectives that Koberger chalked the injuries up to having been in a car crash, so that part obviously wasn't true. And then number 5, even the White House commented on Koberger's sentence.
I would like to begin with a message from the White House to the families of the victims in the brutal murder case in Idaho, who were sharing their heart-wrenching stories about their loved ones before the court today. If it were up to the president, he would have forced this monster to publicly explain why he chose to steal these innocent souls.
Well, I'm not going to take it further than that, but what I would like to ask you is what has stood out to you in this sentencing phase and in terms of the latest information that has emerged in the Koberger case? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.